we think that if you're sharing the responsibilities for the campaign, then that also makes you a dungeon master, even if they're small amounts of responsibilities. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what we consider co-DMing and what we don't consider co-DMing. Zach?
I will, Shiny and I started with, well, I guess one of the types that I'm going to talk about real quick is having one person typically do most of the table running while the other does a majority of the world building and kind of all of the back-end work. So creating a bunch of the NPCs, planning out encounters, helping develop backstories, all of that, where up front there wasn't, at the table itself there was typically just one person that ran everything and the other was kind of did all the background work. So that's one of the types.
Another type of co-DMing styles is to have more than one person at the table with you, sharing both in the creative development process and in the activity of just being at the table and keeping things running. Do you have any
Sure. Yeah, I can also speak from the idea of live streaming in a way that like you have a shared campaign world, even if you're not even on each other's shows or near each other's tables and whatnot. So Tina and I had I think our first thing that we did for the D&D channel was Fury's Breach, and we storyboarded the whole thing out together. We interlaced story moments. We had the same NPCs. Sometimes she would come on just to play the NPC. Sometimes I'd come on just to play the NPC. And anything, we basically made it a race between the two groups. So anything that one did affected the other, and they would see if one burned down a bar in Fort Nyanzaru, the other one saw the aftermath of it and maybe had to deal with it. So that's to me like one of the fun ways to do it. And the way we kicked that whole thing off was the Stream of Annihilation, where we were literally side by side, going back and forth. And those are like my favorite probably ways to do it.
That's awesome. And one thing that we talked about a bit, especially obviously Ruby and Satine go way back. Boots has got some Irish colored boots. Irish has different people that she DMs with, and Zach and I DM together. That's one of the really big things, just like the importance of finding a table that you want to play at. Finding a compatible dungeon master is very important. One of the reasons that Zach and I work together so well is because we can kind of shore up each other's weaknesses. When we started DMing, we went back and forth. I did a lot more world building and he did a lot of the at the table part, and we go back and forth. So when you start co-DMing, you might feel comfortable with one arrangement, and as time goes on, switch roles or go back and forth with different responsibilities, or even end up splitting your table so you feel comfortable moving on your own and you each want to do your own campaign. So we'll talk real quick about some of the benefits and challenges of each of these styles of co-DMing. You want to talk a little bit, Zach, about the sharing table, sharing responsibilities? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. So Shiny and I, as I kind of specified when we first started, we split the world building and table stuff almost in half. And so as time's gone on, we've been slowly changing how we interact at the table. And so it, to me, couldn't be better than having the two of us at the table doing different things. And one of the most common ways that we tend to do it is with our storytelling. We have kind of our overarching narrative, and then we push forward our story as much as we can with specific NPCs. And so Shiny does a majority of very specific characters that are kind of our core of the NPC world, and really pushes those home. So that's kind of her way of being able to drive the story consistently at the table. And then I'll still take the narrator, get dice rolls, that type of stuff, and move things forward. We have done the exact opposite in other cases where she had just a phenomenal story or a particular encounter that was really spoke to her that as time's gone on and she's gotten more comfortable at the table, she was able to start doing, and it was really fun to see. and then I got to actually play specific NPCs more so than normal, because when you're, as probably all of you who are dungeon masters know, when you have a big town or a setting that's really vast, you have so many NPCs to play that sometimes you don't always get to give each NPC their own kind of life and as you're trying to go through. And so one of my favorite little moments was I got to play Dwayne the Rock Olive Johnson, and I got to bring to life just an entirely really fun, crazy NPC. I got to do a bunch of stuff that normally I don't get to quite do. So being able to switch kind of the roles and dynamics based on well, the two of you is really, really great. It's also really helpful for those moments where you have a player that's like, hey, wait a minute, I need to look up how this spell works, and then one of us can go and kind of work through with one of our players on how that mechanic works, or how a new item, like magic item or whatnot, is going to impact, while the other can continue moving our story forward. So it allows for a little bit more of a dynamic. Well, it keeps the table moving more consistently and keeps the flow a little bit better when you're not having to constantly stop and do this or that individually.
Well, and that could be one of the challenges you brought up too, about not being able to keep track necessarily what the other person's doing at your table.
Yeah, I have just kind of like bouncing off of you, Zach. My Co-DMing style is definitely not as like detailed and structured as your guys' is. I absolutely just am in awe of your guys' fighting skills. When I'm Co-DMing, it's kind of like storyboarding, like just talking about like what are the main things that we might want to happen, but then the rest of my game is improv. So the NPCs maybe don't have as elaborate backstories, but it's also nice when you're improvising and having another person at the table just kind of taking on areas that you're not doing yourself. They can maybe like take notes about what you just came up with.
Yeah.
When you feel lost, then you're like, what the heck did I just do? Someone to remind you. But one of the as far as like having people to fill in those gaps at the table, like if one of your players has questions, I have experienced that it can be kind of difficult for me as a DM to then catch up with what just happened. So you definitely want to be on the same page with your co-DM about how that kind of plays out. Because when I've done that, or even said like, hey, can you player go like help this person figure out what this magical item does, or what this really is for your character mechanic, then when they figure that out and they come back into the game and I'm like trying to figure out where they're at, but they just figure it out, I'll have to spend like 30 seconds or a minute just like pausing and like absorbing all of it and then moving forward again.
Yeah.
But that's okay too, because it's okay. It's supposed to be fun. It doesn't have to be that much pressure when you have to like work those things into it.
I think it's probably a good deal different too when you can be in a more relaxed environment. Obviously, a lot of my experience in what we're going to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about for Co-DMing is in streaming. So it's like on the clock. It's we have to keep the narrative moving. It has to be entertaining, not just for the players, but for everyone watching.
Yeah.
And so for me, one of the most important parts of it is the communication. Being able to communicate back and forth, having a shorthand with somebody else is pretty tough because we all live in a world of context, right? It really depends on what you're doing. So making sure that you put the time into planning before, if you need to, but that you're using a shared story space that you are able to make quick notes to people. And then, for instance, when Satine and I do it, she is, like you'll probably hear her say pretty regularly, she has brain damage. She was in a pretty bad car accident. She got hurt. And so I try to take care of the number crunchy things. I try to run initiative for it. I'm trying to be the person that answers questions for things. Yeah. And she shouldn't feel like, she should be confident enough and trust me enough in what I'm doing not to feel like I'm interrupting her or overshadowing her, but it also gives me the opportunity to slide to a player if they have a question, so that she can keep running the things and we don't have to be distracting for anybody else. and then if she needs me to rattle off the rules for something or find her rules for something, it's that much easier because she can just kind of say the thing and then keep going, keep playing with them as an NPC or whatnot, doling out the information that we need to give them while I'm handling the logistics. And then we can flip-flop if we need to, but typically when we do it, we have those assigned roles in those scenarios. So
Yeah, I'm sure on the stream too, it's like you said, you have to keep stuff moving, so it's not, it has to be more smooth, all laid out in advance.
the first Wizard stream, we had less than 90 minutes to run the entire thing. Yeah, it was pretty rough.
That's intense. So yeah, that's a great example of when having a Co-DM is super helpful. If any of you run stream games or anything, it's a lot of responsibility to produce and DM a game. So if you have somebody, even if they're not necessarily helping with a campaign, but also having somebody in the background that might be able to help rules lawyer for you or anything, pick up things that you forget, which can be super helpful.
I will say that I really like that you brought up the building trust between the Co-DMs, because that's really helpful, and that also ties into kind of how we wanted to define part of what Co-DMing isn't. And because if you don't trust the other person, then it's not going to be fun for them, and it's not going to be helpful for you either. So just really like making sure that the person that you're wanting to Co-DM with can trust you, you can trust them, and it might take a little bit to develop that. But the important thing is to talk to each other, especially beforehand, and make sure you're on the same page going in.
Yeah, can I ask you a question real fast? Show of hands, who does session zeros? Okay, keep your hands up if you do them before every game.
What is that?
Got 1, 2, 3. What's a session zero?
Yeah.
Session zero is basically where you check in and define what the campaign, what the game's going to be, and the like how fast and loose you're going to play with the rules, how maybe rule lawyery it's going to be, if it's going to be heavy role play, if it's just going to be tactical most of the time, and how maybe emotionally draining a situation can be. Like we've all seen on Critical Role or Sirens of the Realms or anything like that, how emotionally dense some of those scenes can be. They do get into tactical situations from time to time, but even there, we can allow like the rule of cool to give them a better opportunity to play out empathetic moments. But that all has to be negotiated in advance. So session zero is really the time where I say, hey, guys, this is the kind of game I want to run. And you all say, yay or nay, or I was hoping for something like this, and then I take that information back and we just basically negotiate how this game is going to run, because I'm not, being the DM, I am 1/4 of this group, and everybody should be doing those things for me at the same time. So we try to do ours before, and we try to do it before the beginning of the campaign ever starts, and then at the beginning and end of every session. We do it in the form of an AAR. So that way we can check in with people to see if they need aftercare, to see like if somebody dies in a game. That's usually a good time. You just pause right there and check in with everybody and make sure everybody's okay, because that can be really, really emotionally draining for people. So how that relates to co-DMing is you need to make sure that you have a little bit of time before that, and then after that, so you're doing like a 0.05 almost for your co-DM to make sure that you're both on the same page, and that's one of the things that helps build trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely one area that I want to adapt my playstyle to, because I'm still pretty new to DMing, but even without like just going over the rules and stuff, I try to still check in with my players to see how you guys felt this week since we played last. Like, are you doing good today? Do we need to monitor the session? And just kind of check in with that. But definitely talking about the kind of game that you're about to play, that's definitely an area that I'm taking notes on.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, how many people have played a game and then sat around with the group for like 2-3 hours, maybe gone after and gotten dinner, and like that's what you do after the game, is you just like hang out and talk about how awesome the game was and stuff like that. I feel like we all do that in some degree, but those are, to me, the best games of D&D that I've had. I played one last Tuesday, ended up, we finished at like 11, and I was up talking with them until 4 a.m. It was my first game with that group, and we just had such a good time we just 3 a.m.
Yeah. Well, that's until you've got a good group, that compatibility of your DM is important, but also of the players. Zach and I learned that lesson the hard way with one of our first campaigns. We were just like, hey, come play D&D with us. We didn't have any session zero. We didn't tell people what type of game we were going to be running, and then it was all this mismatch. So yeah, both with your players and your DM, there's a lot of different ways that you can play D&D, as long as you're on the same page, and you can work that out together. And that helps a lot with, like Zach said earlier, when we first started Co-DMing, I am not as comfortable with improv. I'm a planner, as some of you know. So I do the world building, I kind of build the overall structure of what might happen. We make our notes when we're talking about the game. And then I give it all to him. He does all the talking at the table stuff, and I just interject and give him shit as NPCs. So that was how we started, and now we've been running this particular game for over a year now. Yeah. And so it's slowly changing. So that's something you might find too, is that as you're working with somebody, your strengths or weaknesses might change. You'll be able to learn from the person you're DMing with.
Yeah, I always enjoyed the improv piece. Like, I'm guessing everyone that's done some sort of a game has been like, oh shit, I got to start this session in 20 minutes. Let's go ahead and put a couple of things down, and okay, I got 2 hours worth of time to make this work. And so I've always kind of thrived in that. It's always been really fun for me. And so now being able to have somebody else that helps with a lot of planning and is helping write this really cool long-term narrative, it makes the improv actually so much more fun for me to a level that I actually didn't even know existed. Because I get to, since we do actually have a couple of our players here, get to drop little hints about things that will be happening that they might not know about for a year. Because we've talked about our plan, we have a shared vision of where we're going. And because she's done such a phenomenal job on the planning stage, it allows us to kind of drop those little things so that when things do happen later, all of our players will go, hey, and that was something that was one of my weaknesses that I never really even knew was a weakness at the table, just because it was a very different game that I enjoyed running. And so being able to have somebody who truly shores up those gaps is just massive. It really makes for actually a lot more fun for me, and I hope that it translates to a lot more fun for our players than if it's just one of us at the table.
So one of the other styles that I haven't touched on too much is what you do a lot of, Irish, where you're running different attached games, what you talked about, where you guys are running games that aren't at two separate tables but connected. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I'm sure you have a lot more insight in this. So last October I did kind of like a multi-level two-shot series based on Chris Perkins' tweet about it would be fun to throw together a D&D game of first level players who show up naked in Castle Ravenloft. Happy Halloween! Yeah. And so I just told the internet, hey, I'll run a game. I'm not going to do a player cap. Who wants to do it? And I ended up with 3 tables of between 6 and 12 players each.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is a lot more people than I actually thought, but I can't do 36 players at one table, so let's do it every couple days. And so for 2 weeks, I just had one setting, one Castle Ravenloft, and 3 different groups running the same adventure every other night or something like that. And I set it up so that they could affect Castle Ravenloft in different ways that would influence the other players and other tables. And so they could either put something to help them, put something to kind of set them back a little bit more, just depending on whether they rolled a lot of crits or rolled a lot of ones. So yeah, that was really interesting. Just dive into trying to have
the Adventures League is that we as players get to affect how the next storyline goes based on some of the things that happen during the Open and the Epic, what the overall nationwide or worldwide results of the Epic are. And we tried to, what I wanted to do, and I've been pitching this for a while, but the logistics of it are pretty tough, is everything that's on the D&D channel, I wanted to actually interlace. So I wanted it to be like, and I wanted to do this from the beginning. Like when we were in, I thought Cholt was perfect because it's like kind of small and encapsulated.
Yeah.
When you think about like the rest of the Sword Coast. The idea of having each storyline that D&D puts out, having 5 to 10 different streaming parties who are all invested in each other's stuff. And yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like I would then want to watch everybody else's thing just because I want to know how it's going to affect this game that I'm really into. So if Chris Perkins with Dice Camera Action is kind of, leading the charge on Tuesday, and then we have a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday game that loop back around, we can see how the things that Holly and Nate do will affect somewhere down the line, and then we get to see like, oh, this magic item that is supposed to be really important or really powerful, we don't know who has it, and it's all the groups trying to find it or suss that thing out. That to me feels like it feels like it would have been perfect for Dragon Heist.
I'm a good planner.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Well, and that's, and we need people that are, that do prefer to do the planning situations and help to interweave things. I am very comfortable improvising. I can run and write, and I'm fortunate enough that most of the stuff that I'm running is going to be online, so I can go back and watch it later if I need to, and take my own notes about the things that are important to me. But most of the time, I do my planning in advance. I know what the world's going to be like and how it's going to react. But that doesn't necessarily help anybody else that's doing it with me if they were to. So making sure, again, the communication is pretty regular. And we have friends, like we kind of, I don't want to say learned, but like Satine and I like really got excited about the idea of it by some of our other friends who were co-DMing multiple tables together. And sometimes we would run games live, like Battle Royales or whatnot, and we would just switch DMing in different parts. So like if we had 4 tables and 4 DMs, and the tables like would move from one corner of the world to the other, we would swap tables. The DM would just get up and walk over to the other table, and we would start running that on the other side. And obviously that takes a lot of preparation for it. But it's so much fun to feel like you're a part of something that you can like talk about with so many more. It almost makes it an MMO in a way.
Yeah, everybody working together in the same world.
We actually had a really fun event like that in Portland. How many Portlanders are there in here? Sweet. There's a photo pop-up tavern called Orcs or Swords, and they did a local leader event just after PAX West, and their event, there were like 40, 50 players and a bunch of DMs, and the whole event was just like 5 hours long-ish, and there was a bunch of different tables playing in the same world, and what they actually did as far as like quest completion and stuff went towards a greater narrative for all of those tables to either like have everybody win the night or like the city explodes basically. So that's another like really interesting way of just like not even having to like move tables or anything, but everybody actively contributing to the same world.
So what did you guys do to make that successful, during that event?
That was the first event I went to as a player, so I didn't see a whole lot of the backgrounds and stuff. Yeah, but I know I'd have to look up who wrote the adventure for that night, but basically from what I heard, the DMs kind of showed up, got their papers about what the event was going to be like an hour or two beforehand, figured it out, and then tried to do it.
And I mentioned touching base, periodically throughout. How do you make a bigger event like that successful?
Well, we did sort of do it for Dragon Heist in the sense that for the Stream of Many Eyes, we had a lot of the DMs that were given pieces of a puzzle. Some of us were given the pieces to that in advance. For instance, on Inkwell Society, the game that my live stream that's based in Eberron, we were given some of the keys to help with the clues that people were trying to uncover for like Team Volo, to give away some of the interesting clues that would play into the off-the-table game at the stream. But then even that off-the-table game had certain benchmarks that it needed to hit, so that the DMs that were sitting at the table playing on stream later in the day, or even before that, had the moments they kind of like needed to make that all weave in, and also to tell the story that we were trying to tell for Stream of Many Eyes. And so like Elisa Teague is probably the queen of puzzles. She actually wrote the last epic as well, and the open before that. And all of her stuff is really good about interlacing the narratives together. And for that one, her going across the span of like 4 months beforehand, when we started leaking clues about what the stream would be and where it would be and who would be there. And then even so far as me playing Dernan in it. Oh yeah, I'm the voice of Dernan too, for like Neverwinter Online and all that other stuff. So me being there in full Dernan cosplay behind the bar at the Yawning Portal, giving out clues for those games during my stream, or you know, like that stuff, that was all very well coordinated, but it took a lot of planning on her part.
Yeah, if you guys haven't watched the stream of Many Eyes, you should. It's really, really cool. Lots of content there for you to watch. So we talked about inherently the challenges in that, you know, having separate tables, you have to be able to you know, just as DMing at the same table, have a good idea of where your arc's going. Some of us, we've got Critters and Waffle Fam, Shadow Council, all kinds of people in here. So when we did the, what do we call it, Waffle Zinc, yeah. Jerry and Chris's crossover, we were just talking to Chris about that last night, or not last night, night before last or whatever. And he talks about, you know, their campaigns aren't so much, I mean, it's all acting, so it's related, but their games go in very different directions typically, and every once in a while they collide. But because their universes are connected, they still touch base with each other, even though, you know, not what they're doing doesn't always affect the C team. If Chris is going to do something bananas, he'll let Jerry know. Jerry's going to do something ridiculous to the world, he usually lets Chris know, just to touch base. So even if your games are just tangentially related, it's important to make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah, I just noticed that sitting in the crowd is one of the co-authors of Dragon Heist.
Really?
Yeah.
Where?
I mean, I don't necessarily need to make him blush if he doesn't want to, but if he wants to raise his hand and stand up.
Identify yourself.
He could.
Hello.
That's James Haig.
James! One of us. So, that's awesome. The Dragon Heist stuff, all the Yawning Portal, I mean, this has nothing to do with Co-DMing, but all of the physical role play, the costumes and everything brought that world to life for everybody. So as much as, you know, they may not have known how intricate it was in the background, I remember watching comments and stuff on the streams where it took something that, you know, we talk about all the time and then made it real. It was a real set, and really Yawning Portal, and it's just too cool.
Well, James is also really good about, and I'm not gonna like gloat on him too much on this, but he's really good about doing the interweaving as well. He was my editor and also contributed some design work to Xanathar's Lost Notes, to everything else, in which we, because of the luxury of who he is and what we were kind of jointly working on for Wizards, we were able to tie in the adventure at the end of Xanathar's Lost Notes that helps you go from Chult, from finishing that storyline into to Dragon Heist.
That's perfect.
And Waterdeep, yeah.
Right.
So that's, and that in and of itself is kind of a co-DMing, but helping other people to just kind of take that and do it.
Well, yeah, and that might be, you know, part of your style. I work sometimes with some of our friends at DM Online. Sometimes they'll reach out to me or Irish for help or questions or feedback on something they've written, and even that, it may not be co-DMing, but if you've got DM friends out there, feel free to take advantage of them, because we're all helping each other learn. So, I was going to talk about, let everybody talk about some Success stories, we've talked about that a little bit, but if there are any particular success stories you want to highlight, and what you think made that successful, or if there are any particular resources that these people should look into.
I would say definitely on the topic of talking to your friends who are dungeon masters. Co-DMing doesn't have to be long term. You can co-DM for like special events. You can co-DM to get people started. I've helped a few of my friends to like get more confidence in their own co-DMing skills by saying, yeah, sure, I'll come in for your session 0 and your first game, or however long you want or need, and I'll just kind of like start it up, and then you can take the reins, and I'll just help you if you feel like you need the help until like you're good to take over your own campaign. Like it can definitely be just something that is more short term, or just as like a little boost instead of like a long term commitment that you would have as like a regular player at the table. So my first resource suggestion would be your friends.
So I have a couple little things to talk about. So something Rudy said earlier that Shiny and I do is the two of us sync up or discuss kind of what we're planning throughout the week, because obviously we live together, so it's kind of helpful. But even before our sessions, like when we'll get back from work or whatnot, we'll spend about an hour before the session making sure that we're on the same page, know what we're going to be talking about. We do the same thing after our players leave. After we do like a table talk with them on highlights and all of that, we'll kind of decompress and talk about the things that we thought went really well, what things we thought didn't, what things we could have improved on. So it's kind of our post-mortem, so to speak, for that. But we also, as DMs, feel free to take breaks during the session, because sometimes your players will throw really random things at you that you could let derail, or if you're not on the same page right away, or don't know how you should handle it, because I've had a couple of those where I'm like,
Just like panic at each other. We need 2 minutes.
and so we'll, slink off into, another room and kind of put our heads together real quick and take 5 minutes that doesn't really disrupt the flow of the game. So by all means, please make sure that you're doing that if you need it. But I want to point out just a kind of a cool success story. That's something that Shiny and I have been working on for a little bit. Was we typically don't do a whole ton of like monologuing or like what we almost call cutscenes. So we actually wanted to do something for our players for kind of the end of our season of our story, and both of us had like some individual sequences that we were kind of really excited at individually to kind of bring to life. So there's just some certain character moments that we had we each wanted to do some very specific things, and so at the table we actually got to take time where Shiny ran 2 very specific like cutscenes where it was just her and this other player going through just a really cool moment, and it was pretty lengthy, covered like a bunch of little story bits and new items, and almost like their magical attunement is part of that piece. And so being able to see like we each had different captions on how those kind of our attachments to certain characters or those particular moments that we want to do, and that really comes across. And so the more you guys can each play to your strengths, the better. Find the things that you really like and kind of play off of each other on that, because being able to split that session into kind of 3 or 4 little pieces and do them as almost like mini episodes I thought was actually one of the coolest sessions that we had done. And it really, I found it just super engaging, even to sit there, and even though I knew every bit of that story, I still just sat there and just watched it unveil, and it was really rewarding to see, your other co-DM get to go through and unveil their part of it and have them be just as excited as you are about what you're about to cover. So that was one of my most recent kind of cool success
a time where you both been like shooketh and needed to talk? How did you handle it?
Well, you know, the luxury of streaming is that people kind of do expect us to take a break at a certain point. And we need to be able to kind of recognize that ourselves and call for it in that moment. A lot of, you know, like especially when you're streaming, you can get maybe wrapped up in the moment. I don't want to necessarily say scared, but you can be. Like you can just be like, well, I know that all of the, like the camera's on, everything else is going on. I don't want to stop and like mess up the story, but you're almost putting yourself at more risk in the story and those people that have trusted you to take care of at the table by allowing things to go too long. And like there was a situation where during Fury's Reach, we needed to take a break really quickly because I could feel the table getting charged because of certain actions from players. And I knew that Satine and I would need a moment to figure out what we were going to do next because it kind of derailed some major plot points that initially everybody said they were into, but in reading that thing, like we learned take the session 0 thing to heart because we had to learn it the hard way, and I had to learn it how important it could be live streaming. So I had to do a lot of this stuff, like learn trial and error live in front of people, and being able to say like, yeah, no, we need to take a break now, even if we already took one, even if we've already done our break for the day. Hey, we'll be back in 5 minutes, no big deal. And if you're at home and you have your players there, like when I play home games, I try to keep everybody at the table and invested in things, not getting up and going, like, you gotta go to the bathroom, sure, go to the bathroom, but you know, wait to refill your Mountain Dew if that's all you're getting up for. Because we want everybody to feel engaged, but also we'll give you a break. You know, we'll plan that thing out, and you never know when we might need one ourselves. Did that answer that well enough?
Yeah. So what happens if you have like a 2-hour stream and your break is planned to be a 1 hour mark? What happens if something like crazy happens at like 15 minutes in? How do you like handle that and keep it going?
Well, I think that 15 minutes is, man, it doesn't matter, you drop. Like you don't cut the feed necessarily, but you just say, oh, we've got some interesting developments happening here in the studio. We'll be back in a minute.
Yeah.
Like you just give them, you don't need to explain it. I kind of hope that in watching the stuff that we've done, nobody can tell when we've needed to do that. But like I know exactly what episode, what point in time. One of them was post-break, so we'd already done our 15-minute break. We came back in, and towards the end of the episode, one of the times, instead of taking a break, I just wrapped things up. And I was like, okay, well, we're in a good place here where that's like, you know, I try and find a nice little cliffhanger there, and then I'm like, so tune in next week to see the exciting conclusion of radio plays, kind of things. Yeah, you just kind of have to learn how to roll with it. And if you're good at improv, you'll be fine.